Hi, I'm Streaky. It's Friday, the Friday before Christmas. It's Q&A day. Here we go. So I'm Streaky from Streaky.com. I've been a mastering engineer for the past 25 years, mastering for super high-end, super low-end, anybody in between. I'm here talking about mixing, mastering, sound in your studio, reviewing pro audio equipment, giving you my knowledge and giving you help to get a better sound and to think about how you're listening to audio in a better way. So if you like that kind of thing, please hit the bell, please subscribe. Every Friday I do Q&A, so let's get going. First question is from Gary Maguire. Love your videos. Thanks, Gaz. What level do you mix at? I don't mix, but do you mix low or general rule 83 to 85 dBs? What are the pros and cons? Okay, I don't know about dBs and SPLs and all that sort of stuff when I'm listening to things. I just use my ears and I listen at the level that I feel comfortable listening at. I tend to find that I'm talking as a mastering engineer as well, not a mix engineer. Mix engineers and mastering engineers listen at different levels. Now, first of all, let me talk to you about what I know about mix engineers and how they listen from sessions I've sat in and mix engineers I've chatted to. To get a balance on their levels, they listen super quiet, like quiet so you can hardly hear it. The point of that is so they can hear if there's any lumps in the mix, to get a balance between everything, to make sure they can hear everything at that low level, and then they can just pop things up the focus points of whatever part of the track it is. That's a kind of general feeling I get for that. They'll also listen at a comfortable level just to hear how it sounds, and then loud with subs in or loud just to get a sort of feel of how that's working. But yeah, mainly a kind of lowish level they're listening to, mix engineers. Mastering, I'm just listening at a very comfortable level. I find that the more you turn it up, the more top that you want to put on, because your ears start getting flattened and the room starts getting involved. So the louder I go, the more bass goes on and the more tops come off. So it's kind of listen at a level where everything is kind of balanced. I find that also when I've listened in bad rooms, I tend to go louder because I'm really trying to push the room out and just get it so it's really loud in my ears. But obviously that isn't ideal, because firstly, if you're working all day on tracks, you're going to get tired and your ears are going to get ruined as well over a period of time. So you really want to listen at a comfortable level that you like, that you just listen every day at that level. If you can get the level so that it's that level, you get a feel straight away as soon as the track goes on, how loud it is, how the speakers normally react at a certain loudness. So that helps you as you're working through your processes to get the sound to as loud as you want it to be. Because if you're listening to a lot of reference material at the same level as you listen to the stuff you master, then obviously your ears are used to a certain sound in the room. And that is just a question of listening all the time. I wouldn't really worry about meters. I mean, some people might say you should, but personally I wouldn't. I'm more of a feel guy, so I would be just listening all the time, getting that experience in my room of listening at exactly the same level to commercial music and to stuff that I'm mastering, and then you get a sound and a feel for how your room sounds, really. So I hope that's answered your question. Next up is from Marcus Stretz, I think I've got that right. Since most DAWs are now 32-bit float, do you prefer to have us sending our mixes to you at 32-bit to avoid dithering? How do you use dither? Okay, so basics of dithering, that's a whole video in itself really, but how you send your tracks to a mastering guy should be at the same bit rate and sample rate that you've mixed it in. Because really you want to leave that to the mastering studio to upsample or downsample, or check out different dither settings and different sounds, so that they can do that in their room on their speakers, so it affects what they're doing. I think that sometimes there's a lot of DAWs that will, if you export it at a different sample rate, they're going to do sample rate conversion, which doesn't sound as good. I did do a video on sample rate conversion, I'll link it above, where, especially on Pro Tools, the downgrade 96 to 44 is massively bad compared to, say, something like Isotope, which is better. So I would definitely just leave it at the sample rate and at the bit rate that you've done it at. A lot of people will send me tracks and say they're 96k files. You'll put them into RX, look at the heat map, and then you've got all this top that's nothing there. So they've obviously upsampled it. So it's kind of, what was the point of that really? You've just done a load of processing on your track for no reason. Sometimes, yeah, you can upsample and then play through the equipment at 96 and you're going to get a better sound. And obviously then all your plugins and things are playing at a different sample rate. So that can help in certain scenarios, but definitely leave that to the mastering guy, because then he's got his kit kit that he's using, and then it's the mastering guy's ears and his experience that's going to get you a better sound. When I'm dithering down, I do have different dither settings for different types of tracks, and I'll listen to those dithers and see which one I prefer for going from 24 to 16, for example. A lot of stuff comes in at 24-bit, so I'll keep it at 24-bit and I'll process it at 24-bit and I'll send it back to the clients at 24-bit, because most streaming services now, 24-bit sounds the best and you can upload at 24-bit. And so when they're doing their conversion down to whatever they're doing, MP3s or ACs or whatever it is, then they've got a higher definition sound to work with to convert it. So I would do a 24-bit, keep it at that. 32 is great, but you can't give it to streaming services at 32, so I'm more likely to kind of dither it down before I go through all my equipment. And some of my equipment, for example, just plays at 24-bit, so it's not going to like 32-bit float files. So if you're in the box, obviously 32-bit's fine. So the next question from Dara is in regard to stereo widening, excluding using stereo widening during the mixing stage where it may be used to make space, do you have any issue applying stereo widening to the final mixdown chain before sending it to mastering, or should you leave the widening to the mastering guy? Have you ever received a mix that's too wide? Okay, so general stuff on stereo width and mastering and mixing, sending tracks off. So I would prefer if things are done in the mix, because then the mix engineers had that decision. I don't really want to make the decision on how wide things should be. I'm a big believer in kind of trying to use width with things like reverbs and panning and stuff like that, because I think sometimes if you use plugins to do stereo width, it can sound a little bit fake and ruin the phase of the track. So I would be more inclined to say to the mix engineer, can you position stuff differently or EQ things in a way, or use reverbs, or do some other creative process to get it wider in certain areas. Now, if I get something that's too wide and it's really phasey, then I can obviously use some plugins to bring it in. I will always ask the mix engineer, is that what you want? Because they might want that as an effect, which is fine. A lot of the time people won't have it too wide. They will try and keep things, so they're solid and so things are positioned in the right place across the stereo field. But stereo width plugins, I have used them, do use them occasionally. I tend to use more MSEQ for doing stereo effects, but I don't do that often. But if you use them too much, even if you use the ones I've used, if you use them over, say, for example, 10%, they just start sounding weird and, like I say, phasey and just odd. So most mix engineers that are good, who have not wanted that, would say to me, why have you done that? And so I necessarily wouldn't do that on certain mixes, depending on who they are. It's very a fake thing. It sounds very exciting when you widen something, but it's not necessarily then going to play well on every system if it's too wide. Mono in the bass is always important, and something that I do a fair bit for the subs, but not for everywhere else. You can start closing the mix in. And also I wouldn't mono the bass on guitar music or any kind of acoustic music, because there's stuff happening in the low end that I want. So it really is track by track, listening to it. I would, as I say, just to sum up, is try and get it done in the mix. Don't let the mastering engineer do too much. Really, mastering shouldn't be doing anything at all. So stop leaving things for the next stage and start clearing them off earlier down the chain, and you're going to get better sound. That goes for recording through to producing to mixing to mastering. Just get everything covered off as you go, and then you should be in a better place than just leaving it all to the end. The mastering guy isn't part of the creative process in that respect. It's more QCing what's happened at the mix stage. Next question from Jack Bally. Hi Streaky, I've been following you for a while, thanks very much. You've obviously got nothing better to do with your time. A while back you did a video about using subs with near fields. In my experience, they sound a bit separated, but in your video you said they can sound good if what. Okay, so I get the gist of this question, how to set up a sub. I agree with you. I think sometimes when they're not set up correctly and with the wrong sub with the wrong speakers, that you can definitely get a bit of separation, and I always felt that for years, and so I kind of poo-pooed the idea and just never bothered with it. Since having a lot more experience with smaller near fields or midfields, using them with subs, I've sort of realised that you can get them to sound like a full range speaker, as long as you do have them set up more with crossovers and stuff. I always start at about 80 hertz for a crossover point of the sub and the if I've got two-way speakers, because then it leaves anything sort of 80 and above, it's going to have a little bit below, but it's just leaving the mid-range speaker to do the work, and then I find that two-way speaker sounds better. And then the crossover point, it kind of merges well at that point with the sub. I would always say, as a general rule, think of a sub in the same same way as part of your speaker system. So if you've got your tops here, then you should really have subs below them at the same level as the speakers. Now, I know that bass can be anywhere in the room and it's not sort of dependent on positioning, but I just found that when I had them as a speaker like these, where I've got, you know, mid, treble and then bass down the bottom, they're all playing together, it's all firing at the same time. I know things are going to hit you at different times, but to me that just sounds right, and that just, so I would always try and just keep the speakers in line. I would try and have 2 subs so that you can, you know, if there is any stereo information below 80, you can hear that and deal with it. But if you have only got 1 sub, then yeah, keep it in the middle of the speakers so that it's kind of in line as much as you can. If it's under a desk, then think about sides and think about that's going to make a kind of, you know, a tube. It's going to rebound off the insides of the desk. So kind of consider things like that. Try and keep it as open as possible. So, you know, you wouldn't put a speaker under the desk, for example. So kind of do the same with the sub. There's plenty of people out there that will give you much more information on sub placement, and it is room dependent as well. So I would have a little play around, but as a general rule of thumb, just keep them together at the front. Okay, so next question from Ricky Demry. Hi, Streaky. Quick question. Where do you think the best place to start gaining traction with mastering business in terms of clients? I've tried Sound Better, but didn't get much from it. Well, this is kind of business in general, I think, is if you're trying to get work, a lot of work comes from referrals. A lot of work comes from people hearing what you've done. So I would say if you're going on somewhere like Sound Better or a service where no one actually knows you, you haven't got any back history, it's very difficult to think you're just suddenly going to get work coming through the door. If you're very, very first starting, whether it's whatever you're doing, I would say you've got to tell all your friends about it. You've got to tell everybody you know so that they know that you're the guy to do that. So if someone asks them, do you know someone who can do mastering or mixing or whatever, then they can put your name in the hat. It's just about promoting yourself, and I would start at a ground level with friends. I would start talking to people, just making sure people are aware that you do it. I would be mastering free, I would be mixing for free just to get that experience and get some work in the door, because those people are going to tell those people. It's really about building up some momentum about you doing it, you being that guy and being able to do that. I think if you're just presenting yourself as that person to the wider world, you don't get those sort of grassroots that you really need to develop first of all to give you the confidence and to give you the kind of referrals that you need and to give you the experience so that you can then move on and move up to getting paid and people wanting to use you because they've heard tracks that are out there that have got your name on. So yeah, definitely from ground level, I would start just getting yourself out there, just talking to people, telling them what you do. So there you go, that's this week's Q&A. If you want me to answer any questions, then please put them in the comments below. #AskStreaky. I'm more than happy to answer any questions on pro audio, mixing, mastering, speakers, rooms, whatever you want to know, then please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of thing and you haven't subscribed yet, go to Streaky.com, sign up for my newsletter. I give stuff away, I get discounts from manufacturers, I can point you in directions that I can't do on YouTube. So it's only once a month, start of every month is Audio Anorak's newsletter. So please go to Streaky.com, sign up there. Till next time, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. Cheers. Goodbye.